Good evening and welcome to TDM Talk Show. Making domestic violence a public crime in Macau has been an issue that has divided lawmakers and members of society. Tonight's guest plays an active role in raising awareness about domestic violence in the SAR. Cecilia Hall is a social work lecturer at the Macau Polytechnic Institute, and she is one of the driving forces behind a petition and a concern group that wants domestic violence to become a public crime. Cecilia, thanks for joining us on the program. Now, how did you become involved in this domestic violence issue?
As I remember that in 2 years before 2011, that there's a consultation about the fighting against domestic crime. There's public consultation, and I take a look of the first bill, and I found that it's perfect because it sets two main very good things. The first one is to list domestic violence as public crime, and this is very good at that time. And the second is they include the same-sex couple under the protection of this domestic violence law. I find it's perfect bills on that time, so I expressed my view in 2 years before. And however, after we read the concluding report from the government, and suddenly we found that the government have a U-turn, saying that the domestic violence should be listed as semi-public crime. It's just no change at all. Okay. And so we just joined with some of our friends and also concerned about the gender issues and concerned about the domestic violence issues, and we study very details and also study some other countries' experience, and found that it's just very ineffective if it stays as the semi-public crime. Okay. So, and then we just start our online petitions and use some social media and use Facebook to connect people, to make people aware about this law first. So after a month, we collect around 1,000 something signatures from online. Yeah.
I'd just like to ask you then, can you explain the difference between semi-public and public crime, and why you and your group are pushing for domestic violence law to become a public crime?
Yeah, actually, if we can say that for nowadays we don't have any law related to domestic violence. So nowadays, we have only two rules from the penal code. The specific law is about 137 and 138, and two penal law. And the first one is 137. It's related to the common assault. That means that law is semi-public crime. If a strangers who beat you up, and then you can decide, you have the right to decide whether you prosecute that person or not. And this also includes in the domestic violence. That means if your husband to beat you up at home, and then there's a semi-public crime, and then you need to decide whether you start that prosecution or not. That's a semi-public crime. That means the decision to make the prosecution is bear by the victims. But if it is public crime, then if that crime known by other peoples and known to police, known to social worker, then the decision is not being made by the victims, and the public authority will intervene, and the police will check up and will investigate, is it the true domestic violence, or how serious is it, and how frequencies of this domestic violence happened before. So the public authority will intervene. I think this is very important for the domestic violence. In our tradition, Chinese tradition, we have some saying that family issues is private issues and don't involve other family issues. It's just none of your business. So it's just quite influential thought that implants on every Chinese people. So this is very, I think it is very bad for people don't involve others' family issues. When someone who are very, maybe who are in the family is very weak and they are in a very disadvantaged position. For example, for the women, they may be from a very low income country and they get married with the local residents, and they don't know a lot of resources here, and they cannot have financial independence. So when they face the husband beating up her, and they may think that it's her fate, and they cannot escape from that kind of fate, and they don't want to have a broken family. That it's very shameful for a Chinese family. So they will endure a long time being sexually abused or physically abused for the sake of protecting their children to have so-called complete family.
Okay,
yeah.
So let's look at the process now. If a victim decides that they want to report a case or they have to go to hospital, can you explain the process with the police and the hospitals, if they have to conduct interviews, or how they make the decision to bring in a social worker? How does that work?
I think this is the issues that we need to face now. We do not have domestic violence law, and most of the social work, I'm a social work teacher, and I don't think we have any courses to specifically to talk about the identification of domestic violence. That's why I understand the Social Work Bureau, they are doing some kind of good intention things, is to change the bill to the second one, is shifting the focus on the prevention and cure. So our concern group and I myself also agree with that kind of prevention and cure. That means the treatment part. Yeah, in most of the countries, they have some kind of intervention called bacterial intervention program. That means they need to, both the victims and the abusers, they need to pass through some kinds of counseling provided by counselor and also social workers. They have court order to maybe we can say that just the options of the sentencing. The judge need not to sentence them to the prisons. They can sentence them to have a court order or restraining order or the counseling order. That means they need to mandate it to meet a social worker to deal with their family problems. But now in Macau, we don't have that kinds of guidelines for the police, for the medical professional, for the teachers, for the social worker. We don't have that kind of bill. But if this bill can pass, or I know that now the Social Work Bureau has already done that kind of guidelines. It's ready. But our concern groups think that even though that prevention and cure bills is good enough to provide the counseling for the abusers or domestic violence family, but if the law is still staying in semi-public crime, we don't think that the victims will be brave enough to take actions or to prosecute their intimate partners.
Okay, and they're just too afraid, and I guess talking about police and hospitals, I mean, maybe they might have to go to hospital, but then beyond their hospital visit, you know, the hospital can't intervene and report this case.
Yeah, because the semi-public crime, so-called, they say that they need to respect the victim's rights, but we need to understand someone who are not brave enough, and also they have a lot of consideration that not only consider themselves. For example, for the women, for the traditional Chinese women, they think that they get married. The husband is the only one that they can rely on, and they may think that they don't want the family broken, and then they don't want their children to be grow up in a broken family. We have a lot of stigmatization for that kind of family in Macau or in some Chinese society. So they want to protect their children, and they do not have financially independent in Macau, so they will try to shut up and keep silence. Yeah, so you can logically think that for the victim, if the law stay in semi-public crime, then even though the labor learn that this kind of family always have quarrel and always has some noisy coming from their family. They just want to call the police, call the social worker, and then no use. And then it's very discouraging for the labor who feel eager to help that kind of family. We heard about a lot of such kind of cases that the labor is good enough to help that kind of family to call the police, but end up the victims saying that no, this is no such kind of things, and don't want to involve in the don't want to involve in any judicial system, and don't want to report to the police and dare to talk to lawyer, and they think that they don't have money to employ a lawyer to take a long procedures of shooting her husband. Yeah, so it's just a burden, and it's difficult to let the victim to make the decisions. So we say that it should be public authority to intervene. And
well, I just want to go back to the type of incidents themselves. What would be some of the reasons, do you think, that men or women would resort to domestic violence within families? As a social work lecturer, what do you think within Macau? You know, what are the reasons behind people resorting to domestic violence?
Yeah, I think especially for Macau, we know that we have a lot of casino here, and we have a lot of problematic gambler, and most of them are men. Actually, we are according to most of the statistic data, and then they have a lot of stress working outside. And of course, I don't say that they have pressure and they can use violence to treat their family, to release their pressure. I don't agree with that. But we think that this is one of the outside factors. The environment make the people feeling stressed in our society. And the second very crucial mindset is about the gender equality. I don't think the Macau is really respect women's rights, and many women has still got a lot of traditional values, saying that we need to have one man for their life, and they don't want to be divorced. They want to keep the family, even though they don't think that this is the ideal family for them or ideal marriage. Yeah, but I think the gender equality and the awareness of what domestic violence is, I think this is related. So people think that it is not very big deal, but if we say that violence to anybody is a human rights issues, and no one should exert physical or psychological violence to anybody. So if we think that domestic violence is a human rights issue, then we need to deal with it. And we need to clearly saying by law it is basic moral values that our society believe it is crime. It is domestic violence crime. This is not domestic violence semi-crime. So I think that the law should saying it very clearly, and it's a very good and effective education for the whole general public. Even though you spend quite a long time to do the general public education, but it's no use. But if we have a law to say it as public crime, saying that it's a crime and nobody will do it. Even though if you do it and the victim will say that you are committing a crime, I will report to the police. I think this is empowering for the victim and empowering for the victim who are staying for a long time in the domestic violence family.
So then do you think, I mean, I know your views on the government's idea of prevention. Do you actually think it could be preventable, though? I mean, we do have to deal with cases, but do you think that through education this issue could somehow be preventable?
Yeah, I think it should be. But I think we need to start from the very basic school education. And I know that in Taiwan, if they have a law, they have maybe in 1992 they have already have domestic violence law, and in Portugal also in that kind of years. And over the 30 years or 20 or 30 years, they don't just rely on the law. they have a lot of education, the gender education, and they have sections or civic education to talk about what is domestic violence and teach our children, our students, learn about domestic violence. We can identify, we can help them to identify what is domestic violence. If they face or they have experienced domestic violence or they witness it at home, and then they can tell the social worker in school, and then the social worker can pay a visit to their home, and then more cases can be identified and have early intervention. Then
And
we can stop the domestic violence.
And do you think that different generations have different views as well? Because you've been out and about in the community, do you think young people are more aware of the need to tackle this issue?
Yeah, I believe that for younger generation, they have a lot of resources. They can access to the internet, and of course they may search some information, the resources to help their family. At least they know what is social worker, what social worker can help. But for the older generation, they don't think that their family issues, as they say that it is private issues, is their private sphere, and don't want others to intervene. And for the traditional Chinese people, think that it is shame to seek help from others. I think it is quite different. So the civic education is important, not just for the younger generation, but we should have some advertisement through the broadcasting and let more people to learn about these issues. It's everybody issues. Even though you do not have the domestic violence at home, you are lucky, but you can help others who cannot voice out their problems.
Okay, well, let's move back to the process of legislation. And I know that on April 23rd, Pereira Coutinho's bill was rejected in the Legislative Assembly. And he had proposed his own bill, even though the government had just finished their public consultation. And I guess he just wanted to speed up the process of bringing an end to violence and making it a domestic violence and making it a public crime. And even after this happened in April, here you are with your newly formed group, and you've got the petition going, and you plan to deliver the petition on the 27th to the government. Is that right?
Yeah. Around that time.
Yeah. So do you think it'll work this time around to sort of make them again do a U-turn and go back to public crime as opposed to semi-public?
Yeah, of course, our concern group hope this time is different. It's totally different because today we only use 1 month to draft the petition letter and to connect different people and to connect some scholars from Hong Kong, from Taiwan, and their experience is precious for us. And also this time we mobilize a lot of volunteers. They are from social work and counseling background especially. And before they go out in the street to collect the signatures, we have a detailed briefing or even some debate on that bill, and then they are well equipped to go out. And we also prepare some simple leaflet and to distribute to the audience, to the petitions. They get in touch in that events. So I think we are very encouraging that the feedback is good, because we really use a few minutes to explain two things. The first thing is, what is domestic violence? Have you heard about the domestic violence? And the second is, do you know if the bill set it as semi-public crime and a public crime? Then we can use some example, the real examples, saying that if the strangers beat you up, and then this is public crime. And if your family members beat you up, then if it stays as semi-public crime, then that means the public authority will not intervene. Yeah, so it's easy to be understood by the general public. So this time we have a target, of course. We have a target to fight back and to urge the government to correct the bill, to return back to the first bill, saying that it's a public crime. And the second in the process, I think we have such kind of human touch and face-to-face, mouth-to-mouth, and talk about what are the difference. And then people will be aware. and then we have a lot of media to report. I think this is very good education.
But is it enough to sway lawmakers and even the chief executive? I think it was August last year, he sort of let his preference be known, saying that priority should be given to prevention before the case is handed to the legal system. So, I mean, is it enough to sway the lawmakers?
We prepare for the worst. I think in Macau we understood the atmosphere. We do not have the direct election of our chief executive, so sometimes we may need to use some international pressure, actually. We have already read through all the human rights convention. We resort to some United Nations treaty that's signed by China and although signed by Macau. We see that they respond in 2008 the Macau government has already responded to the UN convention, the CEDAW, the convention about to eliminate all discrimination against women. They respond that they will do the bill to change it as public crime. So we will use that of the evidence to maybe send a shadow report to the UN and saying that the government didn't do anything to prevent or to protect the women being protected from having discrimination, including domestic violence. So we planned to do so. If the government didn't respond to us, that means this government doesn't represent the general public's view on these issues. Or we would like to suggest the government to do the second consultation.
Okay.
If the first one is only collect 71 piece of opinion on this bill, then now we are free. At least for today, we have 3,000 opinion.
Okay. Signatures in the petition. So that kind of represents a vast difference in number.
Okay. If you think that the opinion is quite divided, then why not do the serious and scientific consultation again? Then during this time, we can have more civic education, more education on what is the difference between semi-public crime and crime and public crime. Then I think after the general public learn about what is the law is saying about, and then they can express their view, then that consultation is the real consultation, and then it is good for all and not just for some people who have a power to say something influencing for the whole general public. We need to hear the general public saying, and we need to listen the voice of the survivors of domestic violence. We didn't see that this kind of bill have some consultation on the survivors of domestic violence.
So during your petition then, did any more domestic violence victims speak out? Did you come across more victims?
It's out of our expectation that maybe this is quite private, and they are quite brave to saying that they are the victim of the domestic violence. And then through the internet, we can send private message to those survivors and invite them to tell us more about their experience. And we found that they are hidden cases. In their experience, they did not seek help from any professional.
Oh, so they haven't pressed charges or anything?
No.
Okay.
They just deal with the issue by themselves.
Right.
Or they just endure for 10 years or more than 10 years. But as long as they can move out from their family, they can move out. But the problem didn't change. The problem did not deal with, because there is no other proper intervention. I mean, the social worker, police, or some other kinds of professional to have some counseling to maybe to mediate the communication between the different family members. You know, in the family, we are not saying just the parents, they are fighting. But, you know, there are a lot of other family members who are witnessing the whole process.
Okay.
They are
and they intervene in a sense and perhaps say, keep it to yourselves.
They can learn maybe some kind of youngster. They can learn the physical violence. They learn from their dad beating the women, and then they learn how to deal with the women. It's very bad influence for the male boy. Yeah, for the boy, they are learning exerting the physical violence to women. I think there's a bad role model in that family. So we think that we should have some intervention to cure or to give some treatment on that kind of in that kind of family, so that the violence will stop. Otherwise, we will see the cycle, the vicious cycle. Dad beat mom, and then mom maybe beat the children, and then the children learn how to deal with their stress, and will resort to violence.
And these victims that have spoken out to you and your fellow members of the group, the fact that they haven't reported the incidents, but do they agree with your cause, what you're doing?
Okay.
How does that work if they're too afraid to sort of
actually,
speak out?
one of the cases, she told us that her mother is very brave and called the police and passed through all the procedures without having any professional help. Finally, the court given the restraining order, the court order for the dad should be moved out immediately. However, the father was still staying at home for almost a year.
Oh.
Yeah, that means we have a law, we have a court order for that father, that abusers, but no one to enforce it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So procedures were put in place, but they're not being enforced.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think this is very complicated issues. We have a law is the basic, and then we have a lot of coming up, follow up the situation, and need to the first we need to have some punishment or some order to let the abusers to learn that you are doing something, you are committing a crime. You need to bear the responsibility, and then we need to protect the family. Who need to be protected from not being seen by the abusers. So that is restraining order. So we found that not many survivors who can effectively use or apply for this kind of restraining order. Even though we got it, but
it's ineffective.
Not effective.
Okay.
Yeah, no one to enforce it.
Yes.
Yeah, if you call the police, then if the police still have that kind of mindset, that is family issues, that is family public crime, then no use at all. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like you've got a lot of work ahead of you, Cecilia. Thank you so much once again for coming on the program.
Okay, thank you.
And to those of you at home, thanks for watching. We'll be back next week with another special guest. Good night.